My Lords, the hybrid sitting of the House will now resume. I ask members to respect social distancing. Private notice question on the European Super League. Lord Faulkner of Worcester.
I beg leave to ask the question in my name on the order paper.
Minister, Baroness Barron.
My Lords, the Government will not stand by and watch football be stripped of the things that make millions across the country love it. We will continue to look at everything within our power to stop this proposal going ahead. The Secretary of State spoke to the FA, Premier League and UEFA yesterday to give them the Government's full support in pushing back on these proposals in the first instance. However, we stand ready to do whatever is necessary to represent fans and protect their interests.
I call Lord Faulkner of Worcester.
My Lords, the 6 English clubs which have signed up to this grotesque project have, in the words of Stephen Fry on social media yesterday, and I quote, brought together the whole divided nation, indeed all of Europe, everyone united in disgust and revulsion at such greed and stupidity. I look forward to hearing more in due course about how the government plans to stop it. Meanwhile, may I welcome the announcement of the setting up of the government's fan-led review into the administration of English football, chaired by the excellent Tracy Crouch MP. Can the Minister give me an assurance that the terms of reference for the review will definitely include the possibility of establishing a statutory independent regulator? Reform here is long overdue.
I thank the Noble Lord for his warm welcome to the announcement of the fan-led review and its chair. I can confirm that it will cover the merits of having an independent regulator as well as financial sustainability and governance.
Lord Addington.
Would the government agree that many people regard this proposal as an attack on our cultural heritage going through? And in light of that, would they be even fiercer in trying to prevent these clubs forming effectively a cartel to control revenues for the biggest spectator sport in the world? And would they make sure that other European nations are actively involved with them in stopping this?
We would absolutely agree that this is an attack on our heritage, and nothing is off the table, as my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, said yesterday in terms of protecting it.
I call Lord Laming.
My Lords, the clubs supporting this proposal often claim that their fans are the beating heart of all that they do. Yet sometimes it seems as if the loyalty of these very fans count for little. Yesterday's ministerial statement was most welcome, but could the noble lady assure the House that before any further action is taken, each of these clubs will be required to put the proposal to a vote, at least by their season ticket holders?
It will be up to the football authorities to determine how to deal with this proposal in the first instance, but as I've made clear, they have our full backing.
I call Lord Grade of Yarmouth.
My forecast on the outcome of the Super League proposal will be some resolution through the courts, not the legislatures. And the last time the courts were involved in football governance, we ended up with the Bosman ruling, which just created more and more millionaire players and their agents, which was hardly in the public interest. Does the government accept that they may well be powerless to intervene when learned friends on both sides of the channel start to challenge the cartels that run football on behalf of the Super League?
Well, I do hope that my noble friend is wrong in terms of his prediction about a resolution in the courts, because that implies a long and drawn-out process. As I've said, the government is exploring all options to prevent this proposal, and we will continue to work with the football authorities and our counterparts across Europe to achieve this.
Or Lord Pendry.
My Lords, I commend the robust stance taken by the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition, and all those who have condemned this particular proposal for a so-called Super League. It's unfortunate that 5 of the 6 clubs involved are foreign-owned, with clearly no understanding of the depth of feeling of the British supporters, who recognises the football structure and league structure is one based on our heritage, and we must therefore ensure that we fight to ensure that this is swept away, not on the altar of greed and avarice. Now, my Lords, it was one of the great football managers, the late Bill Shankly of Liverpool, who once slightly exaggerated the interpretation of football's importance when he said football is not a matter of life or death. It's much more important than that. Now, if Bill were here today, what would he think of his beloved Liverpool pursuing this act of folly? Now, my question really is that will the Minister go along with the football supporters to show this particular group of individuals are shown the red flag, or would I say the red card?
I don't think that the owners of the clubs to which the Noble Lord refers can be in any doubt about the strength of feeling both from the fans and from this government.
Nally.
My Lords, will the Minister ask Tracy Crouch to hold public hearings around the regions while she conducts her inquiry?
I'm sure that she will be considering all her options to make sure this is a transparent and effective review.
I call Lord O'Neill of Gatley.
My Lords, I'd also like to express my disgust at this development. It's the culmination of many, many years of the style of ownership that's been so permissible under the way football has evolved, and I'm extremely sad that my own obsession in life of football, Manchester United, is right in the middle of it, and I applaud the government's seemingly strong stance. In this regard, I'd like to echo Lord Fortin's call for an independent regulator to stop the persistent reality of things falling through the cracks of the structure of the FA, the Football League and the Premier League. And secondly, will the government be prepared to go as far as to introduce legislation to encourage a partial fan-based ownership model similar to that currently operating in Germany, which almost definitely, with no surprise, is amongst the reasons why there are no German teams that have been announced as part of this ridiculously named European Super League?
Well, the government has been consulting with fans and football stakeholders throughout the past year to understand exactly what is needed in the review. Both the Prime Minister and my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, have said that legislation is not ruled out, but I think we shouldn't preempt the work of the review, which will be starting shortly.
Call Baroness Altman.
My Lords, I too commend the government on its robust response, and as a Tottenham Hotspur supporter, a club that is involved in this, I too join in the condemnation of the idea. My Lords, this seems to revolve around money rather than about football, and I would ask my noble friend whether the Treasury might consider international tax coordination to address this issue via the financial means.
My noble friend raises an interesting point. I think we've been clear that we think the football authority is the best place to push back on these proposals in the first instance, and they have our backing, but that nothing is off the table if they fail to do so.
I call Lord Bassam of Brighton.
My Lords, I thought Gary Neville spoke for millions of us football fans at the weekend when he condemned the Super League proposals. But my Lords, could the noble lady, the Minister, set out the sort of legal measures the government is prepared to deploy in order to protect the competition laws that govern the current fair access system on which the football pyramid has long been built? And when will the Secretary of State set out the terms for the fan-led review announced yesterday? When will it start, and how will it seek to draw on the fan anger rightly directed at this football-destroying proposition?
With regard to the fan-led review, we will be releasing the full terms of reference imminently. In relation to the Noble Lord's question about what the government can practically do to prevent this, we are looking at everything from governance reform, as I've already mentioned, competition law, and all the mechanisms which allow football to take place. And we've been in close contact with colleagues from BEIS and from the Competition and Markets Authority, who are examining whether this would contravene competition law.
I call Lord King of Lothbury.
Would the Minister agree that the outpouring of concern about the proposed European Super League shows that the organisation of professional football is not just a matter for private clubs to determine among themselves, and that the relationship between clubs and their fans is not the same as that between a supermarket and its customers? Has not the time come to create a regulatory framework within which the governance and the finances of the game can be managed with a degree of competence that has been sadly lacking in recent years?
The Noble Lord is absolutely right, and this will be covered in our fan-led review. I think the House will share my confidence in Tracy Crouch as its chair, as a former Minister for Sport, is very well placed to lead this.
Call Lord Moylan.
I react with some horror to the proposals for yet another regulator who is going to end up simply being gamed by the big clubs, as most regulators tend to be. And could I instead second the remarks of my noble friend, Lady Altman, in saying that there should be really a fiscal solution to this problem by way of imposing a non-dodgeable tax on sports clubs joining closed leagues, which should be, I would suggest, equivalent to 100% of their broadcasting revenues. Would my noble friend be willing to put this to the Chancellor of the Exchequer?
Well, there's a great elegance in the apparent simplicity of my noble friend's suggestions, but I would just repeat that in the first instance, it is for the football authorities to deal with this and respond to the outpouring that we have heard across the country.
My Lords, clubs can't hoover up $300 million a year, pay the world's best players wages nobody else can match, so that they can dominate domestic competitions as well. Fans of other clubs, like Leicester, West Ham, my own club Villa, could never dream of competing for domestic trophies ever again. It's a closed-shop cartel, it's anti-competition, anti-fair play, anti the very ethos of sport. And of course the football authorities should take a tough line, but the government should be looking at this as well. And I think Baroness Altman is completely correct. Given that this is just about money, wouldn't the threat of a windfall tax make them think again?
I share many of the Noble Lord's sentiments, other than the fact that the implication that we're not taking this seriously. We're taking it extremely seriously. The Prime Minister had a round table this morning with all the relevant authorities, and as I say, nothing is off the table.
I call Baroness Taylor of Bolton.
My Lords, will the Minister accept that this outrageous proposal is the consequence of men who are rich enough to buy a football club, but who do not buy into the values of football in this country? And whilst we all accept that Tracy Crouch is someone we have confidence in to undertake a review, surely there is an urgency about this that requires action at the moment along the lines that have been suggested, including early legislation for an independent regulator, an assurance that fans can have a golden share, and whatever fiscal measures might be needed to make it not worthwhile of these clubs going down this particular path.
I know the noble lady is hugely knowledgeable and passionate on this subject, and I've enjoyed listening to her in the chamber on debates around football ownership and governance in the past. I think it's important that we separate out the immediate urgencies of the issues raised by this proposal, and ministers and officials, it will not surprise her to know, working on this over the weekend as soon as we became aware, as well as addressing some of the wider governance and regulatory issues and funding issues that affect the whole pyramid.
My Lords, all supplementary questions have been asked.